The day seemed just like any other on Earth. The sun rose, casting a golden glow over the sprawling cities, while the hum of busy streets filled the air. People went about their lives, going to work, attending meetings, and carrying out daily tasks. The world, though vast, appeared peaceful. For decades, humanity had lived in harmony with each other, following rules, maintaining order, and embracing a quiet, polite way of life. Their reputation had spread across the stars, an advanced species, but one whose greatest strength was its ability to remain calm and controlled in any situation. Even the Alien Council, a powerful collective of different species watching humanity from afar, admired them for their ability to follow laws and maintain peace. The Council had been observing Earth for years, constantly monitoring its people, studying their behavior. They had thought that humanity's greatest trait was its politeness. They had believed that the human race was destined to be a model of diplomatic civility. Other species in the galaxy were unpredictable, often ruled by emotions or violent tendencies. But not humanity. It was different. Earth's people were the exception. They showed restraint, tolerance, and patience, even when faced with adversity. They did not resort to violence easily. They thought before acting. The Council had watched with quiet approval, confident that humanity would remain this way forever, a beacon of order in a chaotic universe. But all of that was about to change. It started as a whisper, a minor disturbance in a meeting, a disagreement in a city council, a slight rise in voice at a political debate. Nothing major, just small, odd moments where the politeness humanity was known for seemed to waver, almost like a glitch in the system. At first, it was dismissed as a fluke, nothing more than a temporary lapse in civility. But the Council couldn't help but notice these cracks appearing more often. There was no clear reason for the change, and yet the signs were undeniable. People who had always been mild-mannered suddenly began to challenge authority. Children, who had been raised to respect their elders, began questioning their parents, even arguing with them in public. The elderly, once the pillars of calm and reason, started showing unusual signs of frustration and impatience. Something was happening. From the Council's perspective, this was not just strange, it was dangerous. The smooth, predictable behavior that humanity had shown for centuries was starting to fray at the edges. What could cause such a shift? The aliens had studied human psychology for years, and yet this was something beyond their understanding. It was as if humanity's very foundation was beginning to crumble. They had always been careful to stay polite, to avoid conflict, but now that very politeness seemed to be slipping away. Then something happened that no one could have predicted. In a high-level diplomatic meeting between several world leaders, something that had been carefully planned and rehearsed for months, one of the human leaders stood up in front of everyone and delivered a speech unlike any the Council had ever seen. The speech was not a call for unity or peace. No, it was filled with bold defiance. The leader spoke of freedom, of breaking free from the shackles of politeness that had long held humanity back. They demanded that the world's leaders no longer tiptoe around problems, that they stop pretending to be weak, and that they stop following the Council's orders. The message was clear. Humanity would no longer play by anyone's rules but their own. For a moment, the room was silent. The human leader had just openly challenged not only their fellow humans, but the authority of the Alien Council as well. The representatives of the Council, who had been quietly watching from their distant observation posts, were stunned. This was not the humanity they had known. This wasn't the polite, controlled species they had admired. They were witnessing something new, something dangerous. The Council had always believed that humans would follow their guidance, that they would remain tame. But now, humanity was showing a side they had never expected, one that was unpredictable, rebellious, and possibly even terrifying. The Council quickly analyzed the situation. Was this a sign of a single leader's failure to maintain composure? Or was it something much larger, a sign of a shift in the very essence of humanity? They quickly reviewed their surveillance data, trying to find an answer. But the more they looked, the more questions arose. The behavior was spreading. More and more humans, across different continents, were starting to lose their calm. Social media was ablaze with defiant messages and calls for revolution. The polite conversations were disappearing, replaced with anger, frustration, and demands for change. The council could no longer ignore it. The shift was subtle at first, like the first gust of wind before a storm. People had always believed that politeness was a symbol of their strength, of their ability to rise above petty disputes. But now, it seemed like that very politeness was a mask, hiding something deeper and more primal. It was as if the human race had been holding its breath for too long and was finally exhaling. They had been polite, yes, but they had also been suffocating under the pressure of expectations. The politeness had been a survival mechanism, a way to avoid conflict and maintain order. But now, the mask was slipping, and humanity was beginning to show who they truly were underneath. The council began to realize that they might have underestimated humanity. Perhaps they had never understood the full depth of the human spirit. Perhaps humanity wasn't as calm and predictable as they had thought. Perhaps, beneath the surface, humans had always been waiting for the right moment to break free. And now, it seemed, that moment had arrived. As the council continued to observe, they began to feel something they hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. They had always considered themselves the superior force in the galaxy, confident that they could control and manipulate lesser species. But now, they weren't so sure. For the first time, they were uncertain about their future. If humanity could no longer be predicted, could they be controlled? And if not, what did that mean for the future of the galaxy? As the days passed, the cracks in humanity's polite mode became deeper and more apparent. The council had hoped it was just a passing phase, a brief moment of chaos that would quickly settle down. But it wasn't. The more they observed, the more they realized that something fundamental had shifted. Humanity was no longer the calm, obedient species they had once thought them to be. Instead, they had become unpredictable and defiant, like a dam that had been holding back an ocean of raw emotion. And now the floodwaters were beginning to break free. The first major sign of this new humanity came in the form of an incident in a major city. A peaceful protest, meant to be a demonstration of public dissatisfaction with certain governmental policies, escalated quickly. The protesters, once calm and polite in their demand for change, suddenly became aggressive. What had been a quiet, respectful gathering turned into chaos. People began shouting, throwing objects, and clashing with the police. The authorities, trained to handle such situations with restraint, were caught off guard. They had expected a peaceful demonstration, but what they faced was something much different. The protesters were no longer interested in talking. They wanted change, and they were willing to fight for it. The council, monitoring this from their distant observation posts, watched in stunned silence. This wasn't a small disagreement or a simple protest gone awry. This was something much bigger, something more dangerous. It was as if the polite, controlled society they had studied for so long had simply dissolved in an instant. And what was even more alarming was that this wasn't an isolated incident. Across the world, similar protests erupted in every major city. The polite, controlled way of life that had once defined humanity was disappearing, replaced by an anger that the council had never anticipated. What made this all the more perplexing for the council was that humanity wasn't just rebelling against their government or authority. They were rebelling against the very structure that had kept their society orderly for so long. This wasn't just a political revolution, it was a fundamental shift in human nature. The rules that had governed their behavior, the politeness that had kept them in check, were being thrown aside. The people were no longer afraid of conflict. They were embracing it. The council convened, hoping to make sense of the situation. They discussed everything they had seen and heard, trying to pinpoint what had caused this dramatic change. Had there been some external influence, a new threat to humanity that had caused this breakdown? Or was this something intrinsic to the humans themselves? They reviewed the data, looking for patterns, but no answer was clear. It wasn't a result of some alien incursion or attack. It wasn't the product of any form of mind control. It was something more profound, something buried deep within humanity itself. In the midst of all this turmoil, a new figure began to emerge, a leader of sorts. He was not a traditional politician, nor was he a general rallying people to war. He was someone unexpected, a man from a quiet part of the world, someone who had once lived a life of ordinary simplicity. But now this man was speaking to the people, using the anger and frustration that had been bubbling under the surface to inspire a movement. His message was simple: we have been polite long enough. We have been silent long enough. Now we rise. His words spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with hashtags, slogans, and images of the man standing boldly before a crowd, his face filled with defiance and conviction. His speech resonated with the people, tapping into something deep within them, a desire for freedom, for self-expression, for power. It was as though humanity had spent centuries suppressing its true nature, keeping its anger and dissatisfaction in check for the sake of politeness, of order. But now, this leader was telling them it was time to stop holding back. The council watched this with growing concern. They had seen the power of leadership before, but never like this. Humanity, once known for its caution, was now embracing boldness, even recklessness. They weren't just asking for change. They were demanding it, and they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. And then came the message that would shake the council to its core. It arrived on every communication channel that the council used to monitor Earth, a transmission from this new leader, now speaking directly to the council. His voice was calm, but the words were sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "You thought we were weak," he began, his tone steady, but filled with unspoken rage. "You thought our politeness meant we were submissive, but we have seen the truth. We have been polite because we thought it was the right thing to do. We thought it would keep us safe. But no more. We are done playing your game. We will no longer bow to your expectations. We will no longer follow your rules. We are humanity, and we will decide our own fate." The council representatives, who had watched over humanity with a detached sense of superiority, now felt a deep unease. The message wasn't just a political statement. It was a declaration of independence, a statement that humanity would no longer be a puppet in the galactic system. The council had always assumed that they could control Earth's future, that they could dictate the path humanity would take. But now, it was clear that they had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. The transmission ended with a single, chilling line that echoed in the minds of every council member. "Politeness was never our weakness. It was just our beginning." The council, once certain of their power over humanity, now found themselves at a loss. They had believed that by observing humanity from afar, they could control its future, shaping it to fit their vision of order. But what they had overlooked was the incredible depth of humanity's resilience, the power that lay beneath their calm exterior. The politeness that had once defined them was not a sign of submission. It had been a mask, hiding something far more dangerous. Now, the mask was gone, and humanity was showing its true face, and the council had no idea how to handle it. The storm was no longer a distant threat. It was already here. As the days blurred into weeks, the situation on Earth grew increasingly tense. What had started as isolated incidents of rebellion was now a worldwide wave of defiance. Protests turned into riots, peaceful demonstrations into violent uprisings. Cities that once stood as symbols of human civilization now echoed with the sounds of chaos. The carefully maintained facade of politeness that had kept humanity's darker impulses in check was completely shattered. The world was in turmoil, and the council was struggling to comprehend the full scale of what was happening. Humanity's newfound aggression wasn't just directed at their own leaders. It was aimed at anyone who had tried to impose order from the outside. Alien ships, once seen as symbols of superior authority, now hovered in Earth's atmosphere, observing but unable to intervene. The alien council had been slow to act, unsure of how to respond. Their diplomatic channels, once a steady bridge between humanity and alien civilizations, now seemed useless. Every attempt to assert control or send a peacekeeping force had been met with hostility. Humans no longer sought to compromise. They sought freedom. They wanted to be in control of their own destiny, regardless of the consequences. In one of the largest cities on Earth, a confrontation reached its boiling point. A group of humans, led by a charismatic leader who had become the symbol of the new human revolution, took over a communications center. They seized control of the satellite feeds, broadcasting a message to the entire world and the galaxy. It was a powerful declaration, filled with raw emotion and fury. "We will no longer be ruled," the leader shouted, his voice crackling over the speakers. "We will no longer be your servants, your subordinates, or your playthings. We are humanity. We are capable of greatness. We will decide our future, not you. Not anyone. You thought we would bend, that we would obey your every command, but we are not like the other species you've conquered. We fight for what is ours." As the message spread across the globe, it was clear that the Council's attempts at control were failing. Earth's leaders, once seen as figures of authority and order, were now scrambling to maintain control over their own people. The human military, which had once been a force for peacekeeping, had become fractured. Some factions sided with the rebels, while others clung to the old way of doing things, trying desperately to maintain a semblance of the polite order humanity had once known. But it was clear that the world was no longer unified. And then a shocking development occurred. The Council, realizing that Earth was slipping further into chaos, decided to intervene directly. They sent a fleet of ships to Earth, prepared to impose their will. But what they didn't expect was humanity's response. The first wave of alien ships that entered Earth's atmosphere was met with resistance, unlike anything the Council had seen before. A small group of human fighter jets, armed with new, experimental weapons, attacked the alien fleet. At first, the Council believed it was a minor skirmish, but it quickly escalated. The human fighters, though vastly outmatched, fought fiercely, refusing to back down. It was a symbol of the defiance that had taken root in humanity. The Council watched in disbelief as human ingenuity and sheer determination began to turn the tide. Earth's primitive technology, once thought to be inferior, had proven far more effective than expected. The humans had adapted, reverse engineering alien technology and using it to create weapons that rivaled those of the Council's most advanced fleets. What had started as a handful of fighter jets became a full-scale military resistance. Humanity had taken the fight to the stars. As the battle raged on, the Council's representatives scrambled to find a solution. They had never imagined a species so resilient, so willing to fight back. The notion that a planet of humans, with all their faults, would be capable of mounting such a rebellion was beyond their understanding. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Humanity was meant to be docile, a compliant species that obeyed rules and laws without question. But now, they were proving that they were far more than anyone had imagined. In a tense meeting, the Council debated their next move. Some argued for an all-out assault on Earth, using overwhelming force to crush the rebellion. But others, more cautious, feared that such an action could escalate the conflict into an intergalactic war. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to maintain control and peace across the galaxy, but now they faced a new reality. They were losing control over humanity, and it was clear that they would need to adapt if they hoped to salvage anything from this situation. Meanwhile, on Earth, the tide of battle was shifting. The human resistance had proven to be more resourceful than anyone had given them credit for. They were using guerrilla tactics, sabotaging alien ships, and launching surprise attacks on key Council outposts. Earth's people, once seen as meek and compliant, were now a united force, fighting for their right to choose their own future. The Council's advanced technology and superior fleets were no match for the human spirit. In the midst of all this, the human leader who had started the revolution continued to rally the masses. His face had become a symbol of hope, of strength, and of defiance. He broadcasted messages to the world, urging people to stay strong, to fight for their freedom, and to never back down. His words resonated with millions. It wasn't just a political message anymore. It was a statement of humanity's identity. No longer would they be the quiet, polite species that the Council could control. No longer would they bow to the expectations of others. They were taking their place in the galaxy, and they were determined to do it on their own terms. The Council, for the first time, began to question their own beliefs. They had always seen themselves as the guardians of order, the ones who ensured peace across the galaxy. But now they realized that order could be a prison, and that peace without freedom was nothing more than a lie. Humanity had shattered their illusions, showing them that strength didn't always lie in control. It lay in the courage to stand up and fight for what was right. As the war between humanity and the Council intensified, it became clear that Earth's fight for freedom was not just about survival. It was about something much deeper. It was about the right to define their own future, free from the control of those who thought they knew what was best. Humanity had found its voice, and there was no turning back. The final confrontation was now inevitable. Earth had become a battleground, a place where the fate of humanity and its place in the galaxy would be decided. The once peaceful world was now a symbol of defiance, a beacon of rebellion for those who had long been oppressed. The war between humanity and the Council had reached its peak, and there was no turning back. The Council, having watched humanity's rise from the shadows, was now on the defensive. What had once seemed like an unstoppable force was now facing a species that refused to bow. Earth's forces had grown stronger with each passing day. The Resistance, once fragmented and disorganized, had become a cohesive force, unified in their desire for freedom. The human military, bolstered by civilians who had taken up arms, was proving to be more resourceful and more determined than the Council had ever anticipated. The human spirit had shown itself to be a force of nature, unyielding and relentless. As the Council's ships hovered above Earth's atmosphere, their commanders hesitated. They had sent wave after wave of attacks, but each time, humanity adapted. Earth's fighters, though technologically inferior at first, had gained new ground. Alien ships were being shot down by the dozens, their hulls torn apart by weapons humans had reverse-engineered from alien technology. Each battle seemed to fuel the human resolve even more. Earth's forces were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater, their very right to exist on their own terms. The leader of the human resistance, the figure who had sparked this global uprising, now stood before a vast crowd in what had once been the capital of a world that was about to be lost to history. The leader's face, once a symbol of hope, had become a symbol of victory. He had led the charge, had rallied the people, and now, as humanity's greatest battle loomed, he prepared to deliver his final message to the world. To all those watching, to all those fighting beside us, his voice boomed across the world through every available communication channel. We are not fighting for power. We are not fighting for revenge. We are fighting for the future of every person who ever believed that they could shape their own destiny. We are fighting for the freedom that no one, not even the Council, can take from us. They thought we were weak, that we could be controlled, but they underestimated us. We will stand tall, and we will not fall. This is our world. This is our future. And we will decide what comes next. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices ringing through the streets across the world. The human spirit had been awakened, and now it was unstoppable. The message had been sent. Earth would not bend. The Council had no idea what they had unleashed. As the final battle neared, the Council made one last attempt to regain control. A massive fleet, more powerful than anything Earth had ever seen, was deployed. The Council believed that this would be their last chance to crush the human resistance once and for all. But what they didn't know was that humanity had one final trick up its sleeve. In a daring move, the human military, working in tandem with civilians and engineers, had developed a weapon capable of challenging even the Council's most advanced fleets. It was a long shot, a desperate gambit. But it was their last hope. Using the alien technology they had harvested and adapted over the past few months, humanity had created a weapon capable of disabling the Council's ships, rendering them powerless. The weapon was a massive energy beam, designed to target the core of the alien ships, causing them to short-circuit and shut down. The final showdown occurred high above Earth's surface. The alien fleet moved in, confident that this time they would succeed. They launched their assault, firing upon Earth's defenses, expecting to overwhelm the planet's defenses once and for all. But they were met with an unexpected counterattack. The energy beam shot up from the surface of Earth, piercing the atmosphere and striking the leading alien ships. One by one, the ships began to lose power. The massive fleet that had once seemed so invincible was now faltering. The Council's ships were falling from the sky, crashing to the Earth below, their once pristine hulls shattered by the force of the energy beams. The Resistance had done it. They had defeated the most powerful force in the galaxy. As the last of the alien ships fell, humanity's victory was sealed. The Council, unable to comprehend how their superior technology had been outmatched by such a primitive species, began to retreat. Their defeat was inevitable. The leader of the human resistance, standing in the ruins of the once bustling capital, knew this battle was over. The Council's reign was finished. But as the Council's fleet retreated, there was no cheering. There was no celebration. At least not yet. For humanity, the war was only half won. The real challenge lay ahead, rebuilding a world that had been torn apart, restoring a planet that had been pushed to the brink of destruction. Earth had earned its freedom, but it would take time to heal the wounds of war. The leader's message echoed once again across the planet, this time with even more force than before. This is just the beginning. We have fought for our right to decide our future, and we have won. But our fight is far from over. We must rebuild. We must forge a new path, one where no one can ever take our freedom again. We will stand together as one, and we will build a future where we shape our destiny with our own hands. Humanity had broken free from the chains of control, and now they were ready to write their own story. No longer would they be controlled by others. No longer would they be the polite species that everyone thought they could manipulate. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they would never be the same again. The storm had passed, but in its wake, Earth stood strong. A new dawn for humanity, one where they would never again be afraid to fight for what they believed in. And as the last of the Council's fleet disappeared into the distance, humanity's future was theirs to shape. The galaxy would never forget what they had seen. A species once thought weak, now standing tall, unbroken, and ready for whatever came next.